Ethan Caldwell was worth $4 billion, but nobody in the small cafe recognized him. Dressed in old jeans and a worn jacket, the billionaire looked like any other customer as he sat quietly in the corner, watching his failing business without anyone knowing who he really was. The rundown cafe on the outskirts of Chicago was one of many locations in his franchise that was losing money. Ethan had come here in disguise to see what was going wrong, but what he discovered would be far worse than bad business. As he sipped his coffee, a black cleaning lady moved silently between the tables. Nobody ever noticed her. She was invisible to most people, but she was watching Ethan very carefully. When she wiped down the table next to him, she slipped a crumpled piece of paper onto his tray without saying a word. Ethan opened it and felt his blood turn cold. The note would reveal a secret so dangerous that it would change everything. What this cleaning lady knew would force Ethan to make the hardest choice of his life, and the wrong decision could cost someone their life. If you're someone who appreciates emotional stories, we'd love for you to like and subscribe. There's more to come that might move you too. Ethan Caldwell sat in the back corner of Sunrise Cafe, wearing clothes he hadn't touched in years. The old jeans had holes in the knees, the flannel shirt was faded and wrinkled, and the baseball cap was pulled low over his eyes. At 45 years old, Ethan was worth over $4 billion, but today he looked like any other working-class guy grabbing a quick coffee. This was his cafe, one of 300 locations across the country that bore his name and made him millions every year. But this particular location in a rough neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago was dying a slow death. Sales were down 60% from last year, customer complaints were pouring in, and Ethan needed to know why. His board of directors had recommended closing this location immediately. "Cut our losses," they said. "That neighborhood is too poor anyway." But Ethan had built his empire by understanding every detail of his business, and he wasn't going to shut down a cafe without seeing the problems himself. So here he was, disguised as a regular customer, watching his own employees work without knowing their boss was sitting 10 feet away. The cafe looked tired and worn down. The walls needed fresh paint, several of the light fixtures were broken, and the floor had stains that looked like they'd been there for months. The smell of burnt coffee mixed with something that might have been mold, creating an atmosphere that was anything but welcoming. Behind the counter, a young man named Tyler was working as the manager. Ethan recognized him from his employee files. 24 years old, hired 8 months ago, no college education but good references from his previous job. Tyler seemed friendly enough with customers, but Ethan noticed he spent a lot of time on his phone instead of focusing on the cafe. The barista was a teenage girl who looked bored and moved slowly, like every customer was bothering her. She made Ethan's coffee without smiling or making eye contact, and she didn't clean the coffee machine between orders, which explained why everything tasted burnt. There were only 6 other customers in the cafe despite it being the busy afternoon rush hour. In a successful location, this place should have been packed with people grabbing coffee after work. Instead, it felt empty and sad. Ethan pulled out a small notebook and started writing down everything he observed. The bathroom door was broken and hanging crooked. The music was too loud and playing songs with inappropriate lyrics. Half the menu items were marked as unavailable. The whole place felt like nobody cared about it anymore. But what bothered Ethan most was how the employees treated each other. He watched Tyler snap at the barista when she asked a question about a drink order. He saw both of them completely ignore the cleaning lady who was trying to work around them. There was no teamwork, no respect, no sense that they were all working toward the same goal. The cleaning lady was an older black woman who moved quietly through the cafe, wiping tables and emptying trash cans. She looked to be in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and wearing a uniform that had seen better days. What struck Ethan was how invisible she seemed to be. Customers looked right through her, and the other employees acted like she didn't exist. Ethan had always prided himself on treating all his employees well, regardless of their position. He paid above minimum wage, offered health benefits, and tried to create workplaces where people felt valued. But watching this woman work, he realized that his good intentions at the corporate level might not be making it down to individual locations. As Ethan continued observing, he noticed something else that made him uncomfortable. Tyler, the manager, seemed to pay special attention to young female customers. He would lean over the counter when talking to them, stand closer than necessary, and make comments about their appearance that were inappropriate for a professional setting. One teenage girl who looked like she might be in high school came in to order a drink, and Ethan watched Tyler's behavior change completely. He became overly friendly, asked personal questions about where she went to school and what she was doing later, and even offered to give her his phone number in case she ever needed anything. The girl looked uncomfortable and hurried out as soon as she got her drink. Tyler watched her leave with a look that made Ethan's skin crawl. He made a mental note to investigate Tyler's background more thoroughly and to implement better training and supervision for all managers. As the afternoon wore on, Ethan started to understand why this location was failing. It wasn't just about the rundown building or the poor coffee quality. The whole atmosphere was wrong. Customers didn't feel welcome or safe, employees didn't care about their work, and management wasn't providing proper leadership. Ethan was so focused on taking notes that he almost didn't notice when the cleaning lady approached his table. She moved quietly, just like she did everywhere else, carrying her supplies and a damp cloth for wiping down surfaces. "Excuse me," she said softly, "I need to clean your table area." Ethan looked up and saw that she was standing right next to him, but she wasn't looking at him directly. Instead, she was focused on the table next to his, wiping it down with careful, methodical movements. "Of course," Ethan said, moving his coffee cup and notebook to give her room to work. As she cleaned the table next to him, something unusual happened. Without saying a word or even looking at him, she placed a small, crumpled piece of paper on his tray, right next to his coffee cup. Then she continued cleaning as if nothing had happened. Ethan stared at the paper, confused. Had she dropped it by accident? Was it meant for someone else? He looked around the cafe to see if anyone else had noticed, but everyone seemed to be focused on their own conversations and activities. The cleaning lady finished wiping the nearby tables and moved on to another part of the cafe, still without making eye contact with Ethan or acknowledging what she had done. Ethan's hands were shaking slightly as he reached for the piece of paper. It was folded several times and looked like it had been carried around for a while. The paper was worn and soft, like someone had been holding onto it for days or weeks. He unfolded it carefully, not sure what to expect. What he found written inside made his blood run cold and changed everything he thought he knew about this cafe. In careful, neat handwriting, someone had written, "He's here, the man who murdered my daughter. He works in this cafe. He's going to do it again." Ethan read the words 3 times, trying to process what he was seeing. A murderer, working in his cafe. He looked up from the note and scanned the room with new eyes. Suddenly, every employee looked suspicious. Every customer could be dangerous. Every smile seemed fake and threatening. Tyler was still behind the counter, chatting with a young woman who had just come in. The teenage barista was cleaning the espresso machine. A few customers were reading newspapers or working on laptops. Everything looked completely normal, but now Ethan knew that appearances could be deceiving. He looked around for the cleaning lady who had given him the note, but she had disappeared into the back area of the cafe. Ethan wanted to find her immediately and ask her what she meant, but he also didn't want to draw attention to himself or put her in danger if she was telling the truth. Ethan's mind was racing with questions. Who was this woman? How did she know about a murder? Why was she telling him instead of going to the police? And most importantly, who in this cafe was a killer? As he sat there trying to figure out what to do next, Ethan realized that his simple business visit had just become something much more serious and dangerous. He had come here to find out why his cafe was failing, but instead he had stumbled into what might be a life-or-death situation. The worst part was that he had no idea who to trust or what to believe. The cleaning lady could be telling the truth about a murderer, or she could be mentally ill and making up stories. But if she was right, then someone in this cafe was extremely dangerous, and Ethan might be the only person with the power and resources to stop them. Looking at the note again, Ethan made a decision that would change everything. Instead of walking away and pretending he had never seen it, he was going to find out the truth, no matter how dangerous or complicated it might be. What Ethan didn't know was that the cleaning lady had been waiting months for someone to listen to her. She had tried to get help before, but nobody believed her or took her seriously. Now she had finally found someone who might have the power to stop a killer. But she also had secrets of her own, secrets that connected her story to Ethan's past in ways that neither of them could have imagined. Ethan folded the note carefully and put it in his pocket, then sat back and studied every person in the cafe with new eyes. The manager Tyler was still flirting with customers behind the counter. The teenage barista continued working slowly and carelessly. The few customers scattered around the room looked like ordinary people drinking coffee and minding their own business, but one of them might be a killer. Ethan needed to talk to the cleaning lady who had given him the note, but he had to be careful. If there really was a murderer working in this cafe, he couldn't risk putting her in danger by being obvious about their conversation. He waited 20 minutes, pretending to read emails on his phone while keeping track of everyone's movements. Finally, he saw the cleaning lady emerge from the back room carrying a mop bucket. She started cleaning the floor near the restrooms, in an area that was partially hidden from the main seating area. Ethan got up casually, as if he was going to use the restroom, and walked over to where she was working. When he was sure no one else could see them, he approached her quietly. "Excuse me," he said in a low voice. "I think you left something on my table." The woman looked up at him for the first time, and Ethan could see the fear and desperation in her eyes. She was probably in her early 50s, with kind features and hands that showed years of hard work. But there was something haunted about her expression, like she carried a terrible burden. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said carefully, glancing around to make sure no one was watching them. "The note," Ethan whispered, "about your daughter. I want to help you, but I need to understand what's happening." The woman's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away and continued mopping the floor, trying to look like they were having a normal conversation about cleaning. "My name is Angela Moore," she said quietly. "I've been working here for 3 years, and I see everything that happens. Nobody pays attention to cleaning ladies. We're invisible." "What happened to your daughter?" Ethan asked gently. Angela's hands tightened on the mop handle. Her name was Keisha. She was 19 years old, beautiful and smart and full of life. She had a job at a coffee shop downtown and was saving money for college. Ethan felt his heart sink. The pain in Angela's voice was unmistakable. This was a mother who had lost her child. 6 months ago, Keisha didn't come home from work, Angela continued, her voice barely above a whisper. The police found her body 3 days later in an alley behind her workplace. She had been... Angela stopped, unable to finish the sentence. "I'm so sorry," Ethan said, and he meant it. He couldn't imagine the grief Angela must be feeling. "The police said it was a robbery gone wrong," Angela said, anger creeping into her voice. "They said whoever did it probably panicked and ran away, but I knew that wasn't true. Nothing was stolen from Keisha. Her purse, her jewelry, her phone, everything was still there." Angela glanced around again, then continued working while she talked. "I knew someone had targeted my baby specifically, but the police didn't want to hear that. To them, she was just another dead black girl from a poor neighborhood. They did a half-hearted investigation and then moved on to other cases." Ethan felt sick thinking about how Angela had been failed by the system that was supposed to protect her and find justice for her daughter. "How does this connect to someone in this cafe?" Ethan asked. Angela looked directly at him for a moment, and Ethan could see years of pain and frustration in her eyes. 2 weeks after Keisha died, I started seeing a man around her workplace. He would hang around outside, watching the young women who worked there. He made them uncomfortable, but he never actually did anything wrong, so no one could stop him. "And you think this man works here now?" Ethan asked. "I know he does," Angela said firmly. "I followed him one day when he left Keisha's workplace. He came here and went inside like he belonged. That's when I applied for the cleaning job. I've been watching him for months, gathering information." Angela stopped mopping and looked at Ethan seriously. "He targets young women who work in coffee shops. He studies their schedules, learns their routines, and then he strikes when they're vulnerable. Keisha wasn't his first victim, and she won't be his last." Ethan's mind was racing. If Angela was right, then there was a serial killer working in his cafe, using his business as a hunting ground for victims. "Have you gone to the police with this information?" Ethan asked. Angela's laugh was bitter and sad. "You think the police are going to listen to a black cleaning lady accusing someone of murder without proof? They already decided Keisha's case was closed. They're not interested in reopening it based on the suspicions of a grieving mother." Ethan realized Angela was probably right. The police might dismiss her claims, especially if she didn't have concrete evidence. But that didn't mean she was wrong. "Which employee do you think it is?" Ethan asked. Angela hesitated, then said, "Tyler Manning, the manager. He's 24 years old, but he lies about his background. I did some research on my own, and Tyler Manning didn't exist before 8 months ago when he was hired here." Ethan felt his blood chill. Tyler was the same employee he had been watching and feeling uncomfortable about. The way Tyler interacted with young female customers had already set off alarm bells in Ethan's mind. "What else did you find out about him?" Ethan asked. "He's been fired from 3 other coffee shops in the past 2 years, always for inappropriate behavior toward female employees or customers. But he uses different names and fake references, so employers don't know his history when they hire him." Angela looked around nervously, then continued. "Last week I saw him following a young woman who works at the bookstore down the street. She comes in here every Tuesday after her shift ends. Tyler has been paying special attention to her, learning her schedule, asking her personal questions. Do you think she's in danger?" Ethan asked. "I think she's his next target," Angela said. "That's why I gave you the note. I've been waiting for weeks for someone with power to come into this cafe, someone who might actually be able to stop him." Ethan studied Angela's face and saw nothing but sincerity and desperation. She wasn't a crazy person making up stories. She was a mother who had lost her child and was trying to prevent the same thing from happening to someone else. "Why didn't you tell me your name in the note?" Ethan asked. "Why didn't you ask me to meet you somewhere private?" Angela looked at him like he didn't understand how the world worked. "Because I'm just a cleaning lady. Rich white men don't take meetings with people like me. But if I gave you information without asking for anything in return, you might actually pay attention to it." Ethan felt ashamed. Angela was right. If she had approached him directly and asked for a meeting, he probably would have dismissed her, or had his assistant handle it. But by slipping him the note anonymously, she had made sure he would read her words and take them seriously. "What do you want me to do?" Ethan asked. "I want you to help me gather evidence that will convince the police to arrest Tyler before he kills again," Angela said. "I want justice for my daughter, and I want to save the next girl he's planning to hurt." Ethan looked back toward the counter where Tyler was still working, laughing and chatting with customers like he didn't have a care in the world. If Angela was right, then Ethan was looking at a cold-blooded killer who was already planning his next murder.
"I'll help you," Ethan said quietly. "But we have to be smart about this. If Tyler really is dangerous, we can't let him know we're watching him." Angela nodded. "I've been careful for months. He doesn't suspect anything. What about the girl from the bookstore? When does she usually come in?" Angela checked her watch. "Tuesday afternoons around 4 o'clock. That's tomorrow. We're going to watch Tyler's every move and document everything he does. If he makes any kind of threatening move toward that girl, we'll have evidence. And if we catch him in the act," Angela asked, "then we'll make sure he never hurts anyone again," Ethan said. As Angela went back to her cleaning and Ethan returned to his table, neither of them noticed Tyler watching them from behind the counter. He couldn't hear what they had been talking about, but he had seen them having an intense conversation, and that worried him. Tyler had been very careful for months to avoid suspicion, but now he wondered if the old cleaning lady had figured out more than she should have, and if she had, he might need to change his plans faster than he had expected. What Tyler didn't know was that his next victim was connected to Ethan's past in a way that would make stopping him personal for the billionaire. The girl from the bookstore wasn't just another random target. She was someone Ethan cared about, and that would make the stakes higher than anyone could have imagined. The next day, Tuesday afternoon, Ethan returned to the cafe, dressed in the same disguise. This time, he wasn't alone. His head of security, Marcus Webb, sat at a table near the window, looking like a construction worker on his lunch break. Marcus was a former police detective who had worked for Ethan for 5 years, and Ethan trusted him completely. Ethan had also arranged for 2 other security personnel to be positioned outside the cafe, watching the entrances and ready to respond if anything went wrong. He wasn't taking any chances with what might happen today. Angela was working her usual shift, cleaning tables and emptying trash cans, while staying alert for Tyler's behavior. She had given Ethan a small nod when he walked in, but otherwise acted like she didn't know him. Tyler was behind the counter again, and Ethan noticed immediately that the manager seemed more energetic and excited than he had been the day before. Tyler kept checking the clock and looking toward the door, like he was waiting for someone specific to arrive. At exactly 4 o'clock, the door opened and a young woman walked in. Ethan's heart stopped when he saw her face. It was Emma Richardson, his goddaughter. Ethan felt like he couldn't breathe. Emma was the daughter of his best friend from college, James Richardson, who had died in a car accident 3 years ago. Emma's mother had passed away from cancer when Emma was in high school, so after James died, Ethan had tried to stay involved in Emma's life and help her however he could. The last time he had seen Emma was at Christmas dinner 6 months ago. She had told him she was working at a bookstore while taking classes at the community college, saving money so she could transfer to a 4-year university. She had seemed happy and optimistic about her future. Now, watching her walk into the cafe, Ethan realized that Emma was Tyler's next target. The girl Angela had been trying to protect was someone Ethan loved like family. Emma approached the counter with a friendly smile, completely unaware of any danger. She was 20 years old, with long blonde hair and bright blue eyes that reminded Ethan of her father. She was wearing jeans and a sweater from the bookstore where she worked, and she looked tired from her shift. "Hi Tyler," Emma said cheerfully. "Can I get my usual?" Tyler's entire demeanor changed when he saw Emma. His smile became wider and more intense, and he leaned across the counter toward her in a way that made Ethan's skin crawl. "Emma, I was hoping you'd come in today," Tyler said, his voice taking on a tone that was too familiar and personal. "I was just thinking about you." Emma looked slightly uncomfortable but tried to stay polite. "Just the usual coffee, please. I have homework to do tonight." "You worked too hard," Tyler said, starting to make her drink but keeping his eyes on her. "A beautiful girl like you should be out having fun, not stuck with books all the time." Ethan watched this interaction with growing rage and fear. Tyler was acting exactly like Angela had described, paying too much personal attention to Emma, making inappropriate comments and trying to insert himself into her life. "I actually like studying," Emma said, trying to deflect Tyler's comments. "I'm hoping to transfer to Northwestern next year." "Northwestern, huh?" Tyler said, and Ethan could see him filing away this information for later use. "That's expensive. How are you going to afford that?" Emma looked increasingly uncomfortable with the personal questions. "I'm working and saving money. I'll figure it out." Tyler finished making her coffee and set it on the counter, but when Emma reached for it, he held onto the cup a moment too long, forcing her to brush his fingers with hers. "You know, Emma," Tyler said, lowering his voice, "if you ever need extra money, I might be able to help you out. I know some ways a smart, pretty girl like you could make good money without too much work." Emma pulled her hand back quickly and stepped away from the counter. "I'm fine, thanks. Just the coffee." "I'm just looking out for you," Tyler said, but there was something threatening underneath his friendly tone. "This neighborhood can be dangerous, especially for a girl walking alone. Maybe I could walk you to your car sometime. Make sure you get there safely." "I take the bus," Emma said quickly, "and I'm fine on my own." Tyler's smile didn't reach his eyes.
The bus stop is pretty isolated at night. Lots of shadows, lots of places for bad people to hide. You should be more careful. Ethan felt sick listening to Tyler's words. The manager wasn't offering protection. He was making veiled threats, letting Emma know that he knew her schedule and her vulnerabilities. Emma paid for her coffee quickly and moved toward a table in the corner, clearly wanting to get away from Tyler's attention. But Tyler continued watching her, studying her movements and behavior like he was planning something. From his table, Ethan caught Marcus's eye and gave him a subtle signal. Marcus understood immediately and got up to buy a drink, positioning himself closer to Emma's table where he could intervene quickly if needed. Angela was cleaning tables nearby, and Ethan could see that she was also watching Tyler carefully. She had seen this pattern before with other potential victims, and she knew what it meant. As Emma settled in with her coffee and pulled out her textbooks, Tyler found excuses to walk around the cafe, always staying close to her area. He offered to refill her coffee when it was still mostly full. He adjusted the music and asked if she liked it. He cleaned the table next to hers, even though it didn't need cleaning. Each interaction was brief and could have seemed innocent to a casual observer, but Ethan could see the predatory pattern. Tyler was establishing a connection, making Emma used to his presence and gathering information about her habits and preferences. After about 30 minutes, Emma finished her studying and got ready to leave. Tyler immediately appeared at her table. "Leaving already?" Tyler asked. "You just got here." "I have an early class tomorrow," Emma said, packing up her books quickly. "Which bus do you take?" Tyler asked. "I get off work in an hour. Maybe I could meet you at the stop. Make sure you get home okay." "That's not necessary," Emma said firmly. "I'm fine on my own." Tyler's friendly mask slipped for just a second, and Ethan saw a flash of anger in his eyes. "I'm just trying to be nice, Emma. You don't have to be so unfriendly." Emma looked genuinely scared now. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be rude. I just prefer to travel alone." "Suit yourself," Tyler said, but his tone had turned cold. "But don't come crying to me if something happens to you walking around this neighborhood by yourself." Emma hurried out of the cafe without looking back, and Ethan watched Tyler stare after her with an expression that made his blood run cold. There was no doubt in Ethan's mind that Tyler was planning to hurt Emma, and soon, Marcus followed Emma outside, keeping his distance but making sure she got safely to the bus stop. Through the window, Ethan could see him watching until her bus arrived, and she got on. When Marcus returned to the cafe, he caught Ethan's eye and shook his head slightly, indicating that Emma was safe for now, but that the situation was definitely dangerous. Ethan looked around for Angela and saw that she had moved to the area near Tyler, cleaning while keeping an eye on the manager's activities. Tyler was behind the counter again, but he seemed agitated and kept checking his phone like he was making plans. After another hour, Tyler's shift ended and he left through the back exit. Ethan waited a few minutes, then approached Angela near the restroom area where they had talked the day before. "Did you see what happened?" Angela asked quietly. "Every word," Ethan said grimly. "And I know that girl. She's my goddaughter." Angela's eyes widened. "Then you understand why we have to stop him. Tyler has moved from watching to making direct threats. That means he's getting ready to act." "What's his usual pattern?" Ethan asked. "He studies his targets for weeks, learning their schedules and routines. Then he follows them home to learn where they live. Finally, he strikes when they're most vulnerable, usually late at night when they're alone." Ethan felt panic rising in his chest. "How long does the whole process usually take?" "Based on what happened to my daughter and what I've observed here, maybe a week or two from the first direct threat to the actual attack." Ethan realized they were running out of time. Tyler had already been watching Emma for weeks, and today he had escalated to making threatening comments. That meant Emma could be in danger within days. "We need more evidence," Ethan said. "Something concrete that will convince the police to arrest him." "I've been trying to get that for months," Angela said frustratedly. "He's careful about not leaving proof of his intentions." Ethan thought for a moment, then made a decision that would change everything. What if we could catch him in the act of following Emma or breaking into her apartment? If we have video evidence of him stalking her, that would be enough for the police. Angela looked hopeful but worried. "That would work, but it would mean using your goddaughter as bait. Are you willing to put her in that kind of danger?" Ethan felt torn between wanting to protect Emma and knowing that catching Tyler might be the only way to save her and future victims. "We'll have to tell Emma what's happening and let her decide," Ethan said finally. "She has a right to know she's in danger, and she should have a choice about how to handle it." What Ethan didn't know was that Tyler had recognized him from newspaper photos and business magazines. The manager had figured out that the regular customer was actually the billionaire owner of the cafe chain, and he was planning to use that information to his advantage. The game was about to become much more dangerous and personal than anyone had expected. That evening, Ethan sat in his downtown office with Marcus, Angela, and Emma, trying to figure out how to catch Tyler before he could hurt anyone. The meeting had been difficult to arrange. Emma had been shocked to learn about the danger she was in, and Angela was nervous about being in such an expensive office building. but everyone agreed that Tyler had to be stopped. "I can't believe I never noticed how creepy he was being," Emma said, her hands shaking as she held her coffee cup. "I just thought he was being friendly." "That's exactly what predators like Tyler count on," Angela said gently. "They start small and gradually increase their behavior, so victims don't realize what's happening until it's too late." Ethan felt guilty for not being more involved in Emma's life. If he had been checking on her regularly, he might have noticed Tyler's behavior earlier and been able to protect her. "The question now is how to get evidence that will convince the police to arrest him," Marcus said. "We need to catch him doing something clearly illegal. What if we set up surveillance cameras around Emma's apartment and the bus stop?" Ethan suggested. "If Tyler follows her home or tries to break in, we'll have video proof." Angela shook her head. "Tyler is too smart for that. He's been doing this for years without getting caught. He'll spot obvious cameras and either avoid them or find another way to get to Emma." "Then what do you suggest?" Ethan asked. Angela looked uncomfortable, but she spoke up anyway. "I think we need to catch him in the act of planning an attack. If we can record him talking about what he wants to do to Emma, that would be enough evidence." "How would we do that?" Emma asked. "Tyler keeps a journal," Angela said. "I've seen him writing in it during his breaks. He also talks to himself when he thinks no one is listening. If we could get him to confess his plans out loud while we're recording, that would be proof." Marcus leaned forward with interest. "How do we get him to do that?" Angela hesitated, then said, "We make him think he's about to lose his chance with Emma. Predators like Tyler get desperate when they feel like their target is slipping away. That's when they make mistakes and reveal their true intentions." Ethan didn't like where this was going. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "Emma needs to come back to the cafe tomorrow and tell Tyler that she's moving away," Angela said. "Maybe say she got accepted to Northwestern early and she's leaving town this weekend. That will force Tyler to act quickly, and desperate people make stupid decisions." Emma looked terrified. "You want me to go back there and talk to him again? What if he tries to hurt me right there in the cafe?" "He won't," Angela said confidently. "Tyler doesn't like witnesses. He'll wait until you're alone and vulnerable, but hearing that you're leaving will make him panic and start planning his attack immediately. I don't like using Emma as bait," Ethan said firmly. "It's too dangerous." "Uncle Ethan," Emma said quietly, "if this man killed Angela's daughter and is planning to hurt other people, we have to stop him. I'm already in danger whether I help or not. At least this way, we might be able to save other girls too." Ethan felt proud of Emma's courage, but he was also terrified about putting her in more danger. "If we do this," Marcus said, "we need a detailed plan to keep Emma safe. I'll have teams positioned around the cafe and following Tyler when he leaves work. We won't let him get anywhere near Emma when she's alone. And I'll be working at the cafe, watching Tyler's every move and listening for anything he says about his plans," Angela added. Ethan thought about it for several minutes. The plan was risky, but it might be their only chance to get the evidence they needed to stop Tyler before he killed again. "Okay," Ethan said finally, "but we do this my way, with maximum security and backup plans for everything." They spent the next 2 hours working out every detail. Emma would go to the cafe Wednesday afternoon and tell Tyler her fake story about moving away. Marcus would have surveillance teams positioned around the building and following Tyler after work. Angela would try to overhear Tyler's conversations and see if he wrote anything incriminating in his journal. Most importantly, Emma would never be alone and unprotected. Marcus would have people watching her apartment, her workplace, and everywhere she went until Tyler was arrested. The next day, Emma walked into the cafe at her usual time, but this time she was wearing a wire and had a tiny camera hidden in her jacket button. Marcus was at his usual table, and 3 other security personnel were positioned around the neighborhood. Angela was cleaning tables near the counter, ready to listen to everything that happened. Tyler's face lit up when he saw Emma walk in. "Emma, you're back. I was worried about you after yesterday." "Hi, Tyler," Emma said, trying to sound normal despite her nervousness. "Can I get my usual coffee?" "Of course," Tyler said, starting to make her drink. "You seem different today. Everything okay?" Emma took a deep breath and delivered the line they had rehearsed. "Actually, I have some exciting news. I got accepted to Northwestern University, and they're letting me start this semester instead of waiting until fall. I'm moving to their campus this weekend." Tyler's hands froze on the coffee machine. For just a moment, his friendly mask slipped completely, and Emma could see rage and panic in his eyes. "This weekend?" Tyler said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "That's very sudden. I know it's crazy," Emma said, trying to sound excited instead of terrified. "I can't believe it's happening so fast. I'll have to quit my job at the bookstore and find a new place to live and everything." Tyler finished making her coffee, but his movements were sharp and angry. When he handed her the cup, he held onto it too long again, forcing her to look at him. "That's a big change," Tyler said, his voice low and threatening. "Are you sure you're ready for something like that? Big cities can be dangerous for young girls who don't know how to protect themselves." "I'll be fine," Emma said, pulling her hand away from his. "I'm excited about the opportunity." Tyler's smile was cold and didn't reach his eyes. "Well, I guess this is goodbye then. Maybe we should celebrate your last night in town. I could take you out to dinner, show you a good time before you leave." "That's sweet of you to offer,"
Emma said, "but I have so much packing to do. I'm probably going to be busy every night until I leave." Tyler leaned across the counter, getting too close to Emma's face. "Come on, Emma, just one dinner. What's the worst that could happen?" The way he said those words made Emma's blood run cold. There was a clear threat hidden in his question, and she realized that Tyler wasn't really asking. He was telling her what was going to happen. "I really can't," Emma said, backing away from the counter. "I'm sorry." Tyler watched her move to her usual table, and Angela could see that he was furious. The manager kept finding excuses to walk past Emma's table, and each time he did, he made comments designed to intimidate her. "Shame you're leaving so soon," Tyler said during one pass. "I was really looking forward to getting to know you better. It's dangerous to make big decisions so quickly," he said during another pass. "Sometimes people who rush into things end up regretting it." After Emma left the cafe, Tyler's behavior became even more disturbing. Angela watched him pace behind the counter, muttering to himself and checking his phone constantly. During his break, he pulled out his journal and started writing furiously. Angela managed to get close enough to see some of what he was writing, and what she saw made her stomach turn. Tyler was making detailed notes about Emma's schedule, her apartment address, and the best times to find her alone. Even worse, he was writing about his anger at being rejected and his plans to teach Emma a lesson before she could leave town. When Tyler's shift ended, he left through the back exit as usual, but this time he was carrying a backpack that Angela hadn't seen before. She immediately texted Marcus to let him know that Tyler seemed to be preparing for something. Marcus and his team followed Tyler as he drove to a hardware store, where he bought zip ties, duct tape, and a utility knife. Then Tyler drove to Emma's neighborhood and parked across the street from her apartment building, watching the windows and timing the patrol schedules of the security guards. That night, Tyler returned to his own apartment and spent hours researching Emma's daily routine and planning his attack. He didn't know that Marcus's team had placed surveillance cameras outside his building and were recording everything he did. At midnight, Tyler got in his car and drove back to Emma's neighborhood. He parked in a different location and walked around the building, looking for weak points in the security and ways to get inside without being seen. Marcus's team recorded everything, but they knew they needed more evidence. Breaking and entering would be enough to arrest Tyler, but they wanted to catch him with clear intent to commit murder so he would be locked away forever. The next morning, Angela found Tyler's journal lying open on the break room table. What she read there was horrifying: detailed plans for kidnapping Emma, torturing her for rejecting him, and disposing of her body in a way that would make it look like she had simply disappeared when she moved away. But Tyler had also written something that shocked Angela more than anything else. At the bottom of the page he had written, "Just like I did to Keisha Moore, some bitches never learn to show respect." Tyler had confessed to murdering Angela's daughter in his own handwriting. Angela quickly took pictures of the journal pages with her phone and sent them to Marcus. Finally, they had the evidence they needed to prove that Tyler was a killer and to get justice for Keisha. But Tyler had also written that he planned to take Emma that night, which meant they were running out of time to save her. The trap was set, but now they had to make sure they could catch Tyler without letting him hurt anyone else in the process.
Thursday night, everything came together in a way that no one could have predicted. Angela's photos of Tyler's journal had been enough to convince Detective Sarah Martinez to reopen Keisha's murder case and issue an arrest warrant for Tyler. But Detective Martinez wanted to catch Tyler in the act of attempted kidnapping to ensure he would be convicted and never released. The plan was simple but dangerous. Emma would stay in her apartment as normal, but the building would be surrounded by undercover police officers. When Tyler broke in and attempted to kidnap Emma, they would arrest him with overwhelming evidence of his criminal intent. Ethan insisted on being part of the surveillance team, even though Detective Martinez had tried to convince him to stay away. "This is personal for me," Ethan told her. "Emma is like my own daughter, and Angela has become someone I care about deeply. I need to be here to make sure they're both safe." At 11:30 am, Tyler parked 3 blocks away from Emma's apartment and began walking toward the building. He was wearing all black clothing and carrying a backpack full of restraints, weapons, and tools for breaking into the apartment. Marcus and his team tracked Tyler's movements using night vision equipment and reported his location to the police teams positioned around the building. "Target is approaching the east entrance," Marcus whispered into his radio. "He's checking for security cameras and avoiding the main lighting." Inside her apartment, Emma sat in her living room trying to read a book, but her hands were shaking too much to focus on the words. She knew that Tyler was probably coming for her tonight, and even though she was surrounded by protection, she was terrified. Ethan was positioned in a van across the street, watching multiple camera feeds and listening to all the radio communications. He felt helpless knowing that Emma was in danger and that there was nothing he could do except wait and trust that the police would protect her. Angela was at the police station, looking through photo lineups to officially identify Tyler as the man she had seen near Keisha's workplace. Detective Martinez wanted to have every piece of evidence properly documented before the arrest. At 11:45 p.m., Tyler reached Emma's building, and began looking for a way inside. The main entrance required a key card, but Tyler had come prepared with lock-picking tools and electronic devices that could bypass basic security systems. "He's at the building," Marcus reported, attempting to breach the east entrance. Tyler worked for 15 minutes to get through the security door, and during that time, the police teams moved into position inside the building. They couldn't arrest him for trying to break in. They needed to catch him inside Emma's apartment with clear intent to harm her. At midnight, Tyler successfully opened the door and slipped inside the building. He knew from his surveillance that Emma lived on the 3rd floor in apartment 312, and he knew that she usually went to bed around 11 p.m. Tyler climbed the stairs quietly, avoiding the elevator and security cameras. He had studied the building layout for days and knew exactly how to reach Emma's apartment without being seen by normal security. But Tyler didn't know that the hallways were now filled with undercover police officers, dressed as maintenance workers, residents and security guards. When Tyler reached the 3rd floor, he pulled a set of lockpicks from his backpack and began working on Emma's door. Inside the apartment, Emma heard the quiet scratching sounds and felt her heart start racing with fear. "He's at my door," Emma whispered into the microphone she was wearing. "I can hear him trying to pick the lock." "Stay calm," Detective Martina's voice came through Emma's earpiece. "We're right outside. As soon as he gets that door open and steps inside, we'll take him down." Tyler spent 10 minutes working on the door lock, getting more frustrated as time passed. Finally, he managed to get it open and slowly pushed the door inward. The apartment was dark, except for a small light in the living room, where Emma was pretending to sleep on the couch. Tyler stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind him. "He's inside," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. Tyler pulled a knife from his backpack and began moving toward Emma. He was only 3 steps into the apartment when Detective Martinez and 4 other officers burst through the door with their weapons drawn. "Police, don't move, drop the weapon." Tyler spun around in shock, still holding the knife and the backpack full of restraints and tools. For a moment, he looked like he might try to fight or run, but he was surrounded and had nowhere to go. "Drop the knife now," Detective Martinez shouted again. Tyler looked at Emma, then at the police officers, and finally at the knife in his hand. His face was full of rage and frustration at being caught so close to his goal. Slowly, Tyler dropped the knife and raised his hands. "This isn't what it looks like," he said, but his words were empty. The evidence against him was overwhelming. "Tyler Manning, you're under arrest for the murder of Keisha Moore and the attempted kidnapping of Emma Richardson," Detective Martinez said as she handcuffed him. "You have the right to remain silent." As the police led Tyler away, Emma collapsed on her couch, shaking with relief and adrenaline. Ethan rushed into the apartment and hugged her tightly. "It's over," Ethan said. "You're safe now. He can never hurt you or anyone else again." 2 hours later, Ethan, Emma, Angela, and Detective Martinez sat in the police station as Tyler was processed and booked. The journal entries Angela had photographed were more than enough evidence to prove Tyler's guilt in Keisha's murder, and his attempt to kidnap Emma had been recorded by multiple cameras. "He's confessing to everything," Detective Martinez told them. "Once he realized how much evidence we had, he admitted to killing Keisha and to planning to kill Emma. He also told us about 2 other murders in different cities that we're now investigating." Angela started crying when she heard that Tyler had confessed to killing her daughter. After 6 months of grief and frustration, she finally had the justice she had been fighting for. "I can't believe it's really over," Angela said through her tears. "Keisha can finally rest in peace." Ethan put his arm around Angela's shoulders. "You saved Emma's life, and probably the lives of many other young women. Keisha would be proud of how brave and determined her mother is." Detective Martinez looked at all of them with respect and admiration. "What you did was dangerous, but it was also the only way we could have caught Tyler and gotten justice for his victims. Angela, your persistence and courage made this possible." 3 months later, Tyler pleaded guilty to murder and attempted kidnapping and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The evidence against him had been so overwhelming that his lawyers advised him not to go to trial. Ethan used his resources to establish the Keisha Moore Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping families of murder victims navigate the legal system and find justice. Angela became the foundation's first director, using her experience to help other mothers who had lost children to violence. Emma transferred to Northwestern University as planned, but she also became a volunteer advocate for victims' rights. Her experience with Tyler had shown her how important it was to speak up when something felt wrong, and she wanted to help other young women trust their instincts and protect themselves. The Sunrise Café was completely renovated and turned into a community center, offering free services to families in need. Ethan wanted to make sure that the place where Tyler had worked became a source of healing and hope instead of fear. Angela and Ethan developed a close friendship based on their shared experience and their commitment to helping others. Angela had taught Ethan that real strength came from standing up for people who couldn't protect themselves, and Ethan had shown Angela that there were powerful people who cared about justice for everyone, not just the wealthy. On the first anniversary of Keisha's death, Angela and Ethan visited her grave together.
They brought flowers and a photo of Tyler's conviction, showing Keisha that her killer had finally been brought to justice. She would have been so proud of you, Ethan told Angela as they stood by the headstone. You never gave up on her, and you saved other people's daughters because of your love for her. Angela smiled through her tears. Keisha always said that love was the strongest force in the world. I think she was right. Love for her gave me the strength to fight for justice, and love for Emma gave you the courage to help me.
As they walked away from the cemetery, Angela and Ethan both knew that Keisha's death had not been meaningless. Her mother's determination to find her killer had led to the capture of a serial murderer and had created a foundation that would help many other families find justice and healing. Sometimes the most important battles are fought by the people who seem to have the least power. A cleaning lady who was invisible to most people had brought down a killer that the police couldn't catch. A billionaire who thought he only cared about money had discovered that protecting others was more important than protecting his wealth. Together they had proven that justice wasn't just for the rich and powerful, it was for everyone who had the courage to fight for what was right, no matter how long it took or how difficult the battle became. And in a small cafe on the outskirts of Chicago, a simple note had changed everything and saved lives that might otherwise have been lost.